Good morning, Year 6. This morning I'm going to be talking you through how to convert between fractions, decimals and percentages, just to make sure that you can still remember everything that we learnt over the last 2 terms in school. So the first thing I'm going to start with is just reminding you that that word percentage or percent means out of 100. Okay, so that's really easy to turn percent into a fraction, because 23% literally means 23 out of 100. So if I was going to write that as a fraction, it would be 23 out of 100. 98%, exactly the same. 98% means 98 out of 100. And exactly the same, 7% means 7 out of 100. Okay, so turning percentages into fractions is really, really easy. Now, when you've got fractions, to turn them into percentages, we need to just remember that percent means out of 100. So all I need to make sure is that all of these fractions are out of 100. So 13 out of 100 is already set to go to a percent. So it would just be 13%, because 13% means 13 out of 100. Now this one here, 32 out of 50, I need to make that out of 100 instead of out of 50. Now if I'm turning that 50 into 100, I'm going to double it to make it 100. So whatever I do to the bottom, I'm going to do the same to the top. So to turn 32, I'm going to double it and it's going to be 64. So now I've got 32 out of 50 is equivalent to 64 out of 100, and because that's now out of 100, I know that that's the same as 64%. Okay, here I've got 9 out of 20, and I know that I want that to turn it into a percentage, I need it to be out of 100. So I'm thinking, how many 20s make 100? So I know that if I counted my 20s, I could do 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So I'm timesing it by 5. Okay, and whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So I'm going to times that 9 by 5, which I know is 45. So now that's 45 out of 100, which will be 45%. So now I want you to have a think about what this one would become. At the moment it's 21 out of 25. I need to make it out of 100. See if you can have a go at working out what that would turn into as a percentage. Now then, I know how to turn percentages into fractions and to turn fractions into percentages. So we're going to think about how to turn percentages into decimals. Now, I know that 23% means 23 out of 100. And to turn a percentage into a decimal, all I'm doing is I'm doing that 23 divided by 100. Okay? And I know that to divide a number by 100, I move the digits 2 places to the right when I'm dividing. So it's going to go from being 23 to being 0.23. Okay? That 3 that was in the units column has moved 2 places to the right. Okay, so if I have the number 50%, I know that's the same as 50 out of 100. And so if I divide 50 by 100, it becomes 0.50. I could say 0.50, or I might just say 0.5. Now that's one you should know anyway, because you know 50% is the same as a half. Okay, and a half is the same as 0.5. But that's just to show you. Now, the ones to be careful with are numbers like this, 7%. Okay, so you know that 7% means 7 out of 100. So I've got to do 7 divided by 100. And if you think about 7 being in the units column, in order to be divided by 100, it's got to move 2 places. So it's going to end up 2 places. Okay, as 0.07. So that's just one to be careful with, because quite often that might catch you out. The last thing that I'm just going to talk you through is turning decimals back into fractions. And the easiest way really of doing this is to think about the place value of your decimal digits. Okay, so in this digit here, this number here, 0.23, the 2 is worth 2/10. And the 3 is worth 3/100. So I know that the denominator of that fraction is going to be hundreds, because I'm going to the hundredths column, and then my number is just going to be 23 out of 100. Okay, and this digit here, 0.4, the 4 is worth 4 tenths, so my denominator is going to be tenths, and my top number is just going to be that 4. In this digit here, it goes up to the hundredths column, so my denominator is going to be hundredths, and my number is just going to be 1/100th. And then in this number here, I've got tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So because I got to the thousandths, my denominator is going to be thousandths, and then my number is just going to be 365 thousandths. And if you think about that, the way we just talked about it, I'm going to do 365 divided by 1000. It would give me that number there, okay? So now I'm going to just put this into a context for you and see if we can think about how we can use what we've just talked about to actually answer a question. So here my question is, Miss Pugh scored 82% in a test. Miss Mac answered 4/5 of the questions correctly. Who scored the highest? So obviously I've got a percentage and I've got a fraction, and I need to compare those two. So in order to compare them, I need to turn them into the same thing. So either both into percentage or both into fractions. Now, I don't know if you remember me telling you when we were in school that it's always a good idea not to turn them into fractions, because then you end up with different denominators and it can get a bit confusing. So what I'd be thinking about doing is turning these both into percentages. So Miss Pugh's already a percentage, so I don't need to do anything to that. So I just need to think about what 4/5 is going to be as a percentage. Now then, I know percentage means out of 100. So I want to be thinking about turning that fraction into something out of 100. So I'm thinking about how many 5s go into 100. Now I know that 2 5s go into 10. So 20 5s go into 100. So I've times that 5 by 20, which means I need to do the same thing to this top number. And that's going to become 80 out of 100, which means that my score would be 80%. So now I can see quite clearly that Miss Pugh has just beaten me. So in my answer, I would say Miss Pugh scored highest. Okay, and in terms of an explanation, that mathematical working out is enough. That shows me that I've scored 80%, Miss Pugh scored 82%, so Miss Pugh has scored the highest. And here's another example of the type of question that you could sometimes get. So the question says, what percent of this shape is shaded? So I'm thinking about percent, and I know that percent means out of 100, okay? So that's the first thing I've got in my head. However, I haven't got 100 squares here, so I know it's not out of 100. So I need to work out, first of all, what fraction of this shape is shaded. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to think about how many squares have been shaded. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 are shaded, and that's my numerator, out of, and my denominator is going to be how many squares there are all together, including the shaded shapes. So if I just count the length and the width, I can work out the area. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 down. So that means 4 times 5, there'd be 20 squares altogether. Okay, so the fraction that is shaded is 6 out of 20. But I now need to think about turning that into a percentage out of 100. So I'm thinking how many 20s go into 100, and I know that that is 5 lots. So I'm going to do the same thing to the top number, times it by 5, and that gives me 30, which means that I now know that the percentage that is shaded is 30%. Okay? So for this last question, I'm just going to show you sometimes how they can confuse you and make it seem really difficult, but actually it's not too difficult. You've just got to really think about what the question is asking you. So it's saying here, write the following fraction as a percentage. Now, as I keep telling you, I know that percentage means out of 100. Okay, but I'm looking here and I've got a problem because I can't make 60 into 100. 100 isn't a multiple of 60. So I'm immediately panicking because I don't know how I'm going to do that. But actually, if I look at this fraction, 36 over 60, I notice that both of these numbers are multiples of 6. So I can actually divide these and simplify this fraction here by dividing both sides by 6 and then see if that helps me. So if I do 36 divided by 6, it's 6. If I do 60 divided by 6, my answer is 10. Now suddenly I can see that turning 6/10 into hundredths is really easy, because 10 goes into 100 10 times, so I'm timesing that number by 10. So I've got to do the same thing to my numerator. So my answer is going to be 60 out of 100, which is the same as 60%. Okay, so don't let them throw you off with a complicated denominator, because what you might be able to do is simplify it, and that simplified fraction would make it a lot easier to turn into a percentage. Okay, so have a go at the questions that we've sent you. Let us know if there's anything that you are struggling with or that you need explained further, and good luck.